Greetings, students. Hi, this is Satyaki Chakraborty from Indraprastha Law College, Greater Noida, and today's subject is Jurisprudence-1, and the topic that we're going to discuss is Analytical School of Law, and this is meant for LLB first sem and BL-LLB fifth sem students. Students, in the last classes, we have all discussed the facets of natural law theory and the philosophers connected to natural law theory, the ones who have propounded the natural law theory. From today itself, we'll be discussing Analytical Law School, or school that was, propounded by certain philosophers like Austin, Bentham, and Salmond. So let us see what Analytical Law School is all about. Many times jurists have made the efforts to define law in accordance to its sources and nature. For the purpose of understanding the points of view, the jurists are divided on the basis of approaches towards the law. This division has been helpful in understanding the evolution of legal philosophy. So of course, law को बांटा गया है in accordance to the approach towards law. हर लॉ एक तरीके का नहीं होता है. Here I am not talking about the goodness or badness of law, but I am talking about क्या sources और nature के बारे में हम लोग बात कर रहे होते हैं. So समझने के लिए, उनको पढ़ने के लिए, उनको लेके रिसर्च करने के लिए हम लोगों को अप्रोच समझना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट होता है कि लॉ की अप्रोच क्या होता है. So this division has been helpful in understanding the evolution of legal philosophy. और हम जब evolution के बात करते हैं, evolution tends to mean how law has evolved from time to time or point in time, because it's not static in nature, but it's always evolving in accordance to the changing circumstances, in accordance to the changing of times, in accordance to the changing patterns of the society, be it socio-economic, political, or cultural. Everything is somehow interconnected to each other. One class of these jurists came to be known as positivist or analyst, who had little to do with vague and abstract notions of natural law. So हम पहले ही देख लेते हैं कि positivist या फिर analyst was completely against the idea of natural law theory, because they considered natural law theory as very vague and abstract in nature. These were the believers of analytical or positive school who propounded the theory of positivism. The term positivism was invented by Auguste Comte, a French thinker. The exponents of this school are neither concerned with past nor with the future of law, but with the law as it exists, that is, with law as it is, और जिनको positivum कहा जाता है. तो जो एनालिटिकल स्कूल की प्रोपाउंडर्स रहा है, दे आर नॉट कंसर्न कि पास्ट या फ्यूचर में लॉ कैसे रहा है, उनसे उनका कोई मतलब नहीं है. लेकिन ये कौन सी लॉ की बात करते हैं? लॉ जैसा ही है वैसा होना चाहिए. जैसे लॉ एग्जिस्ट करते हैं वैसे ही लॉ को होना चाहिए. सो दे टॉक अबाउट लॉ एज इट एग्जिस्ट और लॉ एज इट इज़, जिसको पॉजिट्रम भी कहा जाता है. Its founder was John Austin, and hence it is called Austinian School. Now, let us take a peek at the purposes of Analytical School. The purpose of analytical jurisprudence is to analyze the first principles of law without reference either to historical origin or development or their validity. Another purpose is to gain an accurate and intimate understanding of the fundamental working concepts of all legal reasoning. The positive law takes law as a command of the sovereign. It puts emphasis on legislation as the source of law. It regards law as a closed system of pure facts from which all norms and values are excluded. So when we talk about analytical school is very definite in nature. It does not talk about any forms of vagueness or ambiguity. Analytical school talks about the command of the sovereign. It talks about how a sovereign should govern. It talks about the sources of law and emphasizes on the legislation of the law itself. It is a closed system which, and the facts given in the closed system talks about how the values and norms have evolved, and it does not, you know, connect to any form of moral values, moralities, and the patterns of the society. Importance. So, what are the importance of analytical school of law? Firstly, brought about precision in legal thinking. Secondly, provided us with clear and scientific terminology. Thirdly, excluded external consideration which fall outside the scope of law. और जब ये एक्सटर्नल कंसिडरेशन की बात हम कर रहे होते हैं, हम ये मीन करते हैं कि नेचुरल लॉ थ्योरी हम जब पढ़ रहे थे, हम मॉरल वैल्यूज़, मोरालिटी, एथिक्स, कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट, कॉन्शियंस, इनकी जो बात करते हैं, ये लीगल पॉजिटिविज्म में कोई मायने नहीं रखते हैं. Legal positivism is all about absolute form of law, law which is very definite, law which is as it is, and at the end of the day, that law which exists at that very point in time is considered to be the absolute form of law or legal positivism. So every other scope connected to the law, for example, what we have studied in natural law theory, is completely excluded from this domain of analytical school of law. So who are the chief exponents of analytical school of law? Bentham, Austin, Salmon, Holland, and Hart. Now let us see what does legal positivism means. Number one, law commands. Here they talk about law which is commandment in nature. मतलब जो लॉ की हम बात कर रहे होते हैं लीगल पॉजिटिविज्म में, वो कमांडमेंट की बात करते हैं. इट कमांड्स. सेकेंडली, द एनालिसिस ऑफ लीगल कंसेप्ट इज डिस्टिंक्ट फ्रॉम सोशियोलॉजिकल एंड हिस्टोरिकल इंक्वायरीज एंड क्रिटिकल एवोल्यूशन. Thirdly, predetermined rules can deduce decision. So here everything is predetermined, and all these predetermined rules can deduce any forms of decision. Fourthly, moral judgments cannot be accepted or defended by rational arguments. So legal positivism hereby is very much considered to be rational or scientific in nature or empirical in nature. And the point that they have established is कि rational judgment और rational argument हर time moral judgment से बहुत forward चलते हैं. So moral judgment cannot be accepted or defended by rational argument. तो morality की जगह या moral values की जगह यहाँ नहीं है. Law as it is, actual law, absolute law has to be kept separate from the law that ought to be. Law that ought to be is not predetermined. It is post-determined in nature. For example, natural law. And here, law of positivism or legal positivism talks about as law it is and law should exist in its crude form. The fifth meaning is correctly associated with positivism. So law as it is or law as it ought to be, law जैसा ही है वैसा ही रहेगा, law जैसे exist करते हैं वैसा ही रहेगा, that is the true form of law, and that is what lays down the significance of legal positivism. ये होता तो ऐसा होता, moral values attach करके उनको ambiguous form देके या फिर उनको determine करना, उनके साथ बहुत कुछ ideas जोड़ना. जैसे हम जब moral values के हिसाब से कोई लॉ को जज करेंगे तब उसमें कहीं ना कहीं बैडनेस या गुडनेस आ ही जाता है, लेकिन लीगल पॉजिटिविज्म में ऐसा नहीं होता है. इट्स ऑल अबाउट एब्सोल्यूटिज्म. लॉ जैसा ही है वैसा ही पढ़ना है, वैसा ही समझना है, और एम्पिरिकल और या फिर रैशनल अप्रोच से हम लोगों को समझना है. तो जब हम ये कहते हैं कि द फिफ्थ मीनिंग इज करेक्टली एसोसिएटेड विद पॉजिटिविज्म, लॉ एज इट इज एक्चुअली हैज़ टू बी केप्ट सेपरेट फ्रॉम द लॉ दैट ऑट टू बी. So let us draw a conclusion. The school considers law as a closed system of pure facts from which all norms and values are excluded. Again, we jump onto the same point. Analytical school considers law as a closed system of pure fact. It talks about pure fact, pure norms, pure rules, which talks about a rational approach towards law, which talks about how the law is and how it should be understood and deciphered, rather than including all the norms and values which are completely excluded from the analytical school of jurisprudence. Secondly, the ideals do not bother the analytical lawyer. He or she takes the law as given matter created by the state. So, here when we talk about absolutism, anybody who tends to practice analytical school of law, or a lawyer who tends to practice analytical school of law from its own perspective, it does not mean to them, or any kind of significance is not attached in connection to the natural law theory. To them, only thing that matters is how the law is created by the state, and that is how they tend to determine or decipher the law itself, as law it is created by the state, as law exist which is also created by the state. कहीं भी कौन सी अदर पर्सपेक्टिव से उनको जज नहीं किया जाता है, उनको डिटरमाइन नहीं किया जाता है, उनको सिर्फ पढ़ा जाता है कि वो कैसे स्टेट वो लॉ को बनाया था, जैसे वो स्टेट वो लॉ लेजिस्लेट करता है बनाते हैं वैसे ही उनको डिटरमाइन किया जाता है, और कोई यहाँ पे 3, 4, 5, 6 पर्सपेक्टिव ऐड नहीं किया जाता है. जैसे आप नेचुरल लॉ थ्योरी को बहुत सारे पर्सपेक्टिव से डिसाइफर कर सकते हो, अंडरस्टैंड कर सकते हो, मॉरल वैल्यूज अटैच करके, नॉर्म्स, कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट, कॉन्शियंस, गुडनेस एंड बैडनेस एंड सेवरल अदर फॉर्म्स, एथिक्स भी है उसमें. यहाँ पे इन सब के लिए कोई जगह है नहीं. सो जैसे एक स्टेट एक लॉ को बनाता है, in the same way an analytical lawyer or a person who tends to practice analytic or tends to follow the analytical school of jurisprudence will understand and decipher the law itself. Thirdly, the significance of analytical jurisprudence lies in fact that it brought about precision in legal thinking. Of course, it did bring a precision in legal thinking, because this is more practical or pragmatic in nature. So this is what brought the accuracy or the precision. Because, for example, if you look at the other forms, of course we'll be studying several other schools. Analytical school is very much related to rationality. It is very definite in nature. But the other forms of law are philosophical. There are several other factors that tend to determine a single law that exists. But here the factors are very less, because you are trying to understand or decipher a law as the law exists, as the law it is. So since it's very definite, and the precision tends to be higher. And it did bring a dynamic change in legal thinking too, because when you approach anything definitely with proper accuracy, and when you know and there is no vagueness or ambiguity connected to it, it is very much easier for you to implement it in the practical field. So let us look at the analytical school, a brief feature. The purpose of analytical school of jurisprudence is to analyze the first principles of law. Secondly, the main task of the analytical school is the articulate and systematic exposition of legal ideas. Of course, the perspective or the approach towards analytical school is very articulate, very systematic, very definite, and since it's definite, the precision is higher here. Thirdly, one motive of analytical school is to gain an accurate and intimate understanding of the fundamental working concepts of all legal reasoning. Again, it talks about accuracy, it talks about intimate understanding of fundamental working concept of legal reasoning. The analytical school takes law as the command of the sovereign. So since it is, it talks about the commandments, it talks about the command of the sovereign, where other approaches like duty, sovereignty, command all tend to exist, and since it falls on the same line, therefore analytical school is that law which is the command of the sovereign, because it is created by the state and it is deciphered or understood as the state tends to create the law itself. So it acts as a command, just in the line of duty. It puts emphasis on legislation as the source of law. The whole system is based on the concept of law itself. It talks about it lays much of a focus on the legislation of law, how the law is created, how the law is passed, and how the law how the law it is as it tends to exist in its crude form. So the concept of the whole analytical school is based upon that. So please students, this is the basic gist of an idea of the analytical school itself. Please remember, when we talk about analytical school, we talk about absolutism in law. We talk about legal positivism, which means लॉ जैसा ही है उनको ऐसा ही रहना मतलब आपको वैसा ही समझना चाहिए, लॉ एज इट इज and or law the way it tends to exist. This is the basic idea of analytical school. All right. So there are no 3, 4 or 5 perspective, and any forms of norms, codes, ethics, morality, goodness and badness is completely excluded from the analytical school of law. Here law is absolute, law is definite, law is very much full of accuracy, and so as we all know, law is very systematically approached in the analytical school of jurisprudence. And lastly, what we tend to understand is law as the command of the sovereign. जैसे कुछ एक ड्यूटी के लिए कमांड होना चाहिए, और जब हम सॉवरेनिटी की बात करते हैं, इट्स काइंड ऑफ अ लाइन ऑफ ड्यूटी. देयर इज़ अ कमांडमेंट, a duty to be fulfilled, and then we talk about sovereignty, which is very much connected to the state itself, क्योंकि law state ही बनाता है और हम लोगों को वो law follow करना चाहिए without asking any questions or trying to determine it from the other perspectives. There is no iota or there is no place for such determination of law. Here there is a empirical or a rational approach towards law is made with definiteness, and thus the precision is very much higher here. So please do remember again, I'll conclude the class, that law as it is very much connected to legal positivism, and law that is ought to be, that is connected to natural law theory, and that do not hold any place in the domains of natural law theory. So this will be for it today. Thank you, class.